Hey everybody, it's Amanda Dorston. I'm here to do my Module 3 video for our phenomenological study. So originally, my research question was looking at the experiences of preceptor mentorship in athletic training. So the experiences between the clinical preceptors and the athletic training students and how those came about, looking at the positives and negatives. But now that we are kind of in the process and really reading about um, looking for specific essence and looking at phenomenology in particular, I really wanted to narrow it down to looking at the experiences of preceptor mentorship for those mentoring relationships that are positive, specifically looking at what experiences made them positive and kind of going in that direction rather than just looking at the relationship in general, hoping that I was going to get some positives and negatives. So I really wanted to pick out what experiences made them positive in the essence of a positive mentoring relationship. So now that I have that kind of narrowed down, um, let's see, how will I approach the data collection? So I was an athletic trainer and I know a lot of athletic trainers, and so I don't necessarily want to use people who I worked with, only because a lot of them already know my opinions about the relationships between athletic training students and the preceptors and um, all of that. So what I would like to do is I would like to use um, there's a Facebook platform out there for athletic trainers that a lot of us are part of. So I would like to be able to use something like that in order to bring in some participants, use some snowball sampling that we read about in the readings this week, and then be able to get a good number, like 8 to 15 um, athletic training preceptors who would identify um, that they have positive relationships with their athletic training students. Um, in my most recent update for my study, I was able to look at what creates a positive relationship, and it comes down to communication. It comes down to invested interest between both the student and the preceptor. So, using those, I would be able to qualify people into the study to make sure that they would fit my criteria as a positive mentoring relationship. So, that is how I'm going to bring the people and participants into my study. I would prefer to have people from different institutions and different athletic training departments. I would prefer not to have, if I say I have 8 participants, 10 participants, I would prefer not to have 5 of them come from the University of Alabama. I would prefer not to have even as many as 3 coming from the same school. So I would like to be able to get them coming from different schools so then that way they don't all have the same preceptor experience and teaching and the same preceptor education that a lot of the athletic training programs put on for their preceptors. So that way we get a wider variety of preceptor styles, mentoring styles, I suppose. So using that information, I would like to do interviews. So I would prefer not to do them over the phone. I think if I could do them face to face, say it is somebody at Nebraska Wesleyan or up in Omaha or Creighton, I would be able to at least meet them face to face. If it's not somebody that I could meet face to face in person, I would prefer to do video calls or video interviews with them. I think there's something special about being able to actually see the person and have a genuine conversation versus just talking to someone on the phone or emailing them a list of questions and having them fill it out for you. So using those methods, I think would probably get the best results for me. Now, that being said, if I had 2 people coming from the same institution, I think that it would be interesting to have them come together For an interview, I haven't quite decided on that. I guess it depends on who my participants would end up being and if they come from institutions that are the same or kind of around the area. That would kind of be up to what I would end up with as my participant selection. So, but yeah, so using the interviews in person or video conferencing, I think is the easiest, and it will probably just allow the conversation to flow a little bit better. So speaking of that, for my research questions, I want them to all be open-ended. We've talked about and we've read about in class and the texts. For open-ended questions, you don't want something that's going to be a yes or no answer, or something that's going to just be some short answer that is going to answer your question. You want it to be a discussion. You want it to be something where you guys can have a conversation. So for me, being able to have a conversation with my participants about their preceptor style and their mentoring relationships is important, because you're not necessarily going to know what you're getting out of them when you're writing up the questions. You don't know what experiences they've had before the interview. So being able to write questions that allow you to discuss those experiences and kind of expand on those experiences and really come to a deeper understanding of what really goes into it, not just surface level, not someone saying, yeah, communication is what I think goes into my positive relationship, but what types of communication? How are you communicating? What have you tried that hasn't worked communicating with your students? So something along those lines, allowing the participant to really explain what they want to tell you. And if they're not explaining well, being able to then add in questions to kind of pull out more information from them and get more material that's going to allow better analysis later for the data. So I think one of the biggest things that so far I've thought about is the concept of bracketing. I know last week during one of the discussions, Dr. Yao asked if it was even possible to really have bracketing work in a phenomenological study. Are you really able to prevent your experiences and your thoughts from entering the study, really from entering how you're asking your questions, what questions you're asking? So I was kind of looking into that, and it's kind of one of those where I think that by not including bracketing, or by not including the experiences of the interviewer, I think it does a disservice to the study in general. I think it completely negates all of the experiences that the interviewee or the interviewer has that they could contribute to the study. I think that the reason that the study is happening in the first place, Van Manen said it in, I can't remember which chapter, it was either the first or second chapter of the book. The reason that the study is even coming about is because the researcher has a passion for that topic. If they didn't have a passion, then they wouldn't be devoting all of the time and energy into researching it and coming up with this data. So I think the concept of bracketing, it's been talked about in other videos for this discussion as well. I think it's hard to do, and I don't think it's necessarily, for me, going to be the best option. So the other option is bridling, which is, again, understanding where your experiences come from, knowing how your experiences are going to fit in with the study and how they are shaping the study, how they're shaping your questions. I think it's important to know where you're coming from as a person and how that is influencing your study, but not allowing it to influence the data that you are getting from your participants. So not asking leading questions, not asking questions that you already think you know the answer to, allowing the participants to really explain where they are coming from versus interjecting your opinions and your experiences onto them. So again, I think when choosing participants, instead of pretending like I've never been involved in an athletic training mentoring relationship as a student or as a preceptor, I think it's important for them to know that yes, I have been an athletic training student, I have been a preceptor, but not necessarily explaining whether I've been in positive relationships, in negative relationships. I don't think it's important for them to know what I think should go into these relationships, which is again why I can't use people who are um, those who I've worked with in the past. So that's kind of what I'm going with for this study, and how this data collection is going to go about. I look forward to any feedback that anyone can give me. I don't know, especially I think on the um, kind of the difference in my research question in general, whether I've been having a hard time figuring out what the essence is, what the essence means. So I think by narrowing my focus onto these positive relationships and really trying to pull out pieces of the interviews to figure out where these positive relationships are forming and how they form would be the best focus for the study. So I think that's where I really want to go with it. I look forward to feedback on that. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.